right, wanted to give my instant thoughts to that Duke Elite Eight victory over Alabama. Just an amazing, dominant late second half performance. They absolutely pulled away with both their great offense, but also their great defense. This was one of the most amazing defensive performances in March Madness over the last couple of seasons, especially particularly for this program. A lot of people I was talking to throughout the game were complaining about Alabama's offense, and I get it, right? Their offense was not run the best way possible. They were leaving a lot of opportunities on the table, but a lot of times we complain about a team's offense. We don't give credit for how the defense can be the reason behind a team's lackluster offense, and that was the case today. Duke defensively was absolutely off the charts. It wasn't just Flagg, but also Malawak with what he was doing in the paint. There was one play in particular, and it came in the second half where he's defending in drop coverage in the pick and roll, does an amazing job guarding that initial action. Then the guard for Alabama, I think it was Sears, dumps it off to the big. He recovers and has an amazing contest at the rim against that big guy. When we're talking about being a great defensive big man in the NBA, obviously being able to do well in drop coverage is a massive plus, but also being able to cover so much ground is another thing that makes you a massive attribute on that end. And Malawak did that at an extremely high level in this game. So while I'm going to talk specifically about Flagg, I also want to talk about Malawak and give him his flowers. He was amazing. Offensively, he was just all over the place, a ball hawk. He's going to be great once he gets into the league. I think right now for some draft boards, he's projected like a top 10, maybe around that 10 spot sort of guy. So he was amazing in this game. I wanted to give him his credit before I went in on what Flagg has been doing throughout this tournament. So over to Flagg. What we saw from him this game defensively was amazing. He was an absolute monster on that end, doing multiple things, whether it was being present with paint opportunities here and there or guarding well on the ball. There was a possession where he was guarding Grant Nelson, does an amazing job at guarding the drive, and he initially uses his instincts to get in position to draw a charge in the heat of play, and the possession goes the other way in favor for Duke. Then there was another possession late in that second half where he's out there guarding Mark Sears. So again, we talk about that defensive versatility. The commentators were talking about on the broadcast his ability to guard 1 through 5. He did all of that today. That possession where he guarded Mark Sears completely shut him down. And Mark Spears is not an easy cover. He is literally one of the best offensive players in college basketball. And Flagg had just a great defensive possession. That was like the moment where you looked at him and you realized this dude is going to be one of the better defensive prospects we've seen in the NBA in a very, very long time, right? It was just a reminder at how great of a defensive force that he truly is. Because again, most of the conversation around Flagg is centered around his offensive play, and I get it. But we cannot forget that one of the things that makes Flagg so special is his defense. He is one of the best defensive prospects that we've seen projected at number 1 coming out of the draft in years. Now, Wembanyama is the most impressive defensive prospect we've seen out of the draft at number 1 over the last few seasons in general. But on the collegiate level, Flagg is just on an entirely different level than a lot of guys we've seen drafted number 1 overall over the years. Like, he's definitely a better defensive prospect than Banchero, right? Than Zion Williamson, than Cade Cunningham, than Anthony Edwards. Like, the defensive stuff from Flagg, so good. We haven't seen that from a number 1 overall pick, especially on the collegiate level, in a very long time. And what you notice with Flagg over these last 2 games especially is he can specialize in so many specific things that don't involve his scoring. So today it was the defense. He did not have an amazing shooting game, an amazing scoring performance. He's never been a flat out lights out scorer for the entirety of the season. So the defense today was on full display. What was it in the previous game in the Sweet 16 that was on full display? It was his playmaking. If you watch that game, the passes he was making, whether he was operating as the primary ball handler in the pick and roll or making plays out of the short roll control or whatever the case may be, the playmaking was off the charts. There was like some Luka-esque stuff from a playmaking standpoint in that game against Arizona. And I'm not saying he is a Luka level playmaker at all. That's not what I'm saying. But there were like some moments where you just realized how elite of a playmaker he truly was. My favorite pass he made so far throughout this tournament, he had one where he's driving to the basket against Arizona from like the right wing, drives it with his left hand, then spins, and it looks like he's going to go up for like a jump hook. Turns it into a lob to Malawak, who finishes right at the rim with a dunk. That was such an amazing possession. And again, it put this reminder in your head at this idea of him being an amazing playmaker, something that you don't usually see from guys at 6'9". If you look at the way Duke operates this offense, they have utilized him as a 6'9" point guard a ton of times through the season, and it's super apparent through this tournament as well. Long story short, what we're seeing from Flagg is this ability to impact the game even when he's not being a dominant scorer. If you're able to impact the game with your playmaking ability and your defense and some of these other things and just being a great fit within the offense even when you don't have the ball, because we're not even talking about the screens he's setting and his ability to fit well within an offensive scheme. When you're doing those sorts of things on top of already being a really good scorer and being a supreme athlete and all of that stuff, it makes you like the perfect player to want to build a team around. Like if I'm wanting to start a franchise out of anybody in this draft, it is obviously going to be Flagg at number one. It's not just because of his dynamic scoring ability and athletic ability, but it's about some of those other skill sets that he possesses. You can utilize him so many ways in your offense. When you have a player that you can utilize in your offense both as a pick and roll playmaker and primary ball handler, and also as a guy who can set the screen and operate as a short roll player at 6'9", if you have that sort of player in your offense, that is a coach's dream. Can also put him in the mid-post area and ask him to kind of create from there. He does have some really solid mid-range game for an 18-year-old player on the collegiate level. He is just an all-around threat. Definitely one of the best all-around prospects we have seen come out of college in a very long time. And it's not just him. It is a ton of guys. I mentioned Malawak earlier, but also Knipple, who has been amazing the entirety of the season. And I also think he has ridiculous NBA upside with just his pace and control and scoring instincts, and also his playmaking instincts. And then obviously Tyrese Proctor, who is one of the most underrated players in college basketball. Then obviously Flagg. This team gives me vibes of that 2018 Duke squad that didn't win a title, but they were like full of NBA level talent. They had Trey Jones, I believe, that year, Cam Reddish, obviously Zion Williamson, RJ Barrett. This team gives me very similar vibes where you have the squad that plays so well, has some really good young guys and really good freshmen on the team, like a Knipple and like a Flagg, but they're just chock full of this NBA-ready talent. So I'm excited to see what Flagg does the rest of the way down in this tournament. And again, as I said earlier, it's not just him, but it's other guys who have been massively impactful here. But he's just put this reminder in our heads of how great he is, not just offensively, but on the other end of the floor and some other specific things that he specializes at. And that is why I think he is the ultimate player that I'd want to build around, build an NBA team around out of anybody else in his class. I know there have been some debates. There have even been some conversations about him possibly going back for a second year that I have my opinions on. You can go look at my channel feed and see what I said about that. But he's impressive. He's ready to go and dominate right now at 18 years old. I can't wait to see what he does at the next level, and also can't wait to see if he's able to cap all of this off for this amazing Duke squad and bring them to a potential national championship.